Hello, I'm Jack Garzella, and welcome to our Primers video series where we try to ground you in various technical and business concepts and how to marry the two, similar to what we do in our Business and Tech podcast on Spotify and Apple if you want to look for that there. This is on YouTube. We're at End-to-End Results. That's our channel. So if you wouldn't mind subscribing, and then definitely leave us comments about the content, other subjects you guys would like to hear. Would love your feedback. If you want to get me directly, I'm Jay Garzella on Twitter and Jack Garzella Official on Instagram. You can also just email us at info@endtoendresults.com if you have any questions or would like to contact us on anything. Well, I do a lot of work with businesses, trying to get them to grow, get them to be purchased, fix profitability, fix revenue, scale their systems. And basically I started this series because there's a huge disconnect between what executives know, what technical guys know, and their communication. So bottom line is, that's what this series is about. So hopefully find some of these subjects relevant to you, and definitely leave us feedback, and we look forward to interacting with you in the future. Thanks a lot. We'll get to our subject right now.
Our content here, we have the basics for executives and managers. We're going to cover not the clouds you see in the sky, but the clouds that the technical clouds that we talk about. There's 4 primary types. We're going to talk about the services. We're going to talk about when to use them, when not to use them, with some bonus material. So at the end of this, I'm going to give you a little quiz, but basically we're going to be able to answer these 5 questions. What's the cloud? What are the primary types of clouds? That one I'll bet you don't know. You shouldn't use the cloud. I bet you never thought about that. And then cloud vendors, and then public and private clouds, which is questions that came through when we put up the webinar and asked for questions. So we added that to the topics. Okay, so what is the cloud? Very simply, it's when you have computing or application services that are available via network. Typically, these features are going to be like data storage, so Google Drive, iCloud, Dropbox. They could be applications. You're using lots of Office 365 on the internet versus having it on your PC. Could be Google Workplace, things like that. Could be things like your marketing systems, and we'll go into that. That's also infrastructure. So we'll go into that also, where you can get servers and networking and things to make applications run. So the primary features in the cloud are it's available from an internet connection. Okay. Data is not stored locally on your phone, tablet. It's stored in the cloud, i.e. somewhere other than your local machine or your local device. And then the application is normally available via browser or mobile application for tablets and phones. The cloud is not your PC or your local servers. It is not the browser on your PC or mobile device. It is not the internet, at least not formally. We sometimes hear people go internet and cloud synonymously. They are different things. And then it's not your local private network in your building. It's not your private network at your house. We call those private networks. We're going to get into that a little later. But you can see on the right side, we do, since we introduced the topic, we have public clouds, which is what most of us are familiar with, private clouds, which if you're in government or a large corporation or even a medium-sized corporation, you've got a private cloud, you probably don't know it. Hybrid clouds, where most large companies and even smaller companies are using a mix of the services. Okay, let's move on then. So why use the cloud? Well, very simply, for cost savings, it's very, very inexpensive compared to building out data centers, as you can see this guy here on the right, and buying the space and buying the servers. Flexibility in architecture, once you buy those servers, you're locked in for 3 or 4 or 5 years, depending on how long you're depreciating them. Whereas in the cloud, I can switch from one size server to another server. I can get one with bigger memory, less memory. I can get fast storage, slow storage, whatever I want very quickly. It also allows us to scale both dynamically and on demand and manually. So Amazon and Azure from Microsoft, these services have lots of servers that we can use, and you've probably never run out of server space when you've been using Google Workplace and things like that. And then it also simplifies the IT processes, and that also goes back into the cost savings. So you get the benefits of a large, robust system without having all the hardware and to configure the network and the IT servers. You can just configure the systems, write your applications, and your staff is more programmers and maybe operations people versus people that need to move wires and run power and things like that. In a lot of cases, you can do this yourself, especially on these marketing websites these days and things like that. We'll go into some examples of that. But cloud applications you're probably familiar with: Google Drive, Dropbox, iCloud. Those are all public cloud applications. Some you might not be as familiar with: Wix, Keep, Lucidchart, Adobe Cloud. You probably heard of a few of those, depending on your industry. Those are public cloud applications. If you notice, they all handle multiple people, multiple customers, multiple companies. We have Zendesk, Jira, Rollbar. A lot of IT departments use those to manage the apps and bug fixes and code integration, code deployment, code testing. And then some larger companies use ones like Salesforce.com, or smaller companies might use QuickBooks Online. Those kinds of things are also cloud applications. Notice that they're available from a network, primarily the internet, and they store data, although that's not a requirement to store data, but most of them do. And then they have multiple customers. So you and your family and or you and other companies are using those services. Okay, so public and private clouds. I moved this up because there are a lot of questions on this. When we announced the webinar, you were able to, on our webinars, you can ask a question right when you register. So a lot of people ask, so here we go. So I've got this visually, but I also have it over here on the left in text. So basically a public cloud, anyone can access via the internet. You may have to register for a site, you may have to pay a subscription fee. Basically, it's open to everyone. The private cloud is normally at a company's data center or in a company's building if they don't have a formal data center. And you typically will need special security, extra security, sometimes private network software to get you in there. That is not necessarily VPN software, although most companies that have private networks use VPNs, which we'll get into in a later slide. All right. And then we have hybrid clouds. We have a combination of the two. So a lot of companies use this. For instance, a customer that has a shipping system, warehousing system that's inside that they own, but they want to connect to Salesforce.com for email and notifications to the customers. Those are examples of hybrid clouds. So you can kind of see some of these same definitions here on the left and right side of the graphic, as well as the hybrid cloud down at the lower right. So these images are all available via Google Images. This isn't anything super proprietary in this presentation, so feel free to do your research and drill down on this stuff as you need to. It's important to note the cloud is not directly the internet, okay? The internet and the cloud are not equal, even though most cloud applications are accessed, if not all of them, through the internet. The internet, really, if you want to know the definition of that, it's this massive network that lets us access lots of sites, and those sites are generally hosted public, private, or in the hybrid clouds. So it's really the network that allows us to get there. I've been using the internet since the early 90s. Okay. What are the four types of cloud services? Now, you probably heard of this first one, SaaS, software as a service. This is the one most people are familiar with. So this is QuickBooks, this is Zendesk, Canva, Office 365 on the internet, Google Workplace, things like that. Basically, they're full applications. They store your data. They give you all the functionality via generally a browser or an app on your phone, or potentially an app on your PC or Mac, but it's all self-contained. We also have platform as a service. This one most people don't know unless you're in the IT departments. So these are things like Jira, which manages help desk tickets, Circle CI, Git. You may have heard of GitHub to store source code and other content, but there's Git Flow and other things that you can use to build applications with. And then Salesforce.com Lightning, which is their platform for developing applications, things like that. So basically, these are things that end users generally don't use, but IT departments and programmers use to build applications in the cloud. We have infrastructure as a service, okay? So you probably heard of this, even though you may not have heard of the word infrastructure. This is Amazon's AWS. This is Microsoft's Azure, or the Oracle Cloud, Google's cloud. There's 5 or 6 main vendors for this. We'll show those on another slide. But this is where I can rent servers, I can rent storage, I can rent all kinds of really deep IT things. Back in the day, I was a CIO of Overstock.com, and we had to, back then in the mid 2000s, we had to build out our own data centers. We had to bring our own routers in. We had to bring our own servers and storage in. We had to configure all the disaster recovery. Now all of that is hours of clicking or a couple of configuration scripts in these vendors, and it's all done for you. And that's where those cost savings come in. And then finally, this last one, FaaS, functions as a service. So these are a little harder to explain because they're very point functionality, such as video conversion. Maybe I want to convert from, an Apple format to an MP4, or convert a JPEG to IM and a different image video, things like that, image format, sorry. So, these are functions as a service. They're not as widely used today, but these are a growing area of the cloud. So again, the cloud is not your mobile PC. It's not this. The one thing I want to bring up on the right side here, you see these X's? It's not the Internet of Things. The cloud is not the Internet of Things. Now, the Internet of Things needs the cloud and it needs the internet to work. So if your car is sending up location data or maintenance data to General Motors or whoever, your local car dealer, if your iPhone is sending lots of data back up about where you are and what you're doing, whether you think it is or not. Anyway, there's lots of things. Airplanes send down data constantly about their maintenance issues while they're flying, anything that needs to be addressed after they land. Those kinds of things happen while you're in the air. That's the Internet of Things. It uses the cloud to get its data. It uses the internet to send the data down, but it is not a cloud in and of itself. Okay. All right. Now this slide I have found on multiple white papers, multiple vendors' websites. They all look very similar, so I just picked one. But software as a service is services, just like it says. But what you can see here on the right side is software as a service on this right-hand column. It's everything. It's the application, the data, the runtime, the storage, the networking, everything is done for you. You pay a subscription and the vendor is taking care of all of that. Okay, whereas platform as a service, you're taking care of the applications and the data, whereas the vendor, say AWS or Azure or somebody is doing all the middleware. You might be using some of their runtimes, but also down here, their servers and storage. And then finally, when you get into infrastructure, this is the pure play guys like AWS, like Azure, these guys, Oracle Cloud, whatever. But these guys have the servers and storage, and you can configure them any way you want. And you're handling everything on the application stack. You can pick your operating system or you can install your own. There's lots of options here. The platform and the infrastructure as a service get a bit mixed. There's a lot of overlap here, depending on, because Amazon has a lot of features now, AWS does, that are in platform as a service. And the platform as a service guys are expanding their into infrastructure, their features into infrastructure. So a lot of overlap here, but those are two specific things you'll see out there. If you're doing it all yourself, and you can see this blue column on the left, you got to manage it all in your own data center or your own building or whatever it might be. So again, examples are Google Drive, Office 365 on using your browser, Dropbox. Those are services examples, Salesforce Lightning, Heroku, which is used to deploy and manage applications. That's an example of platforms, whereas AWS, Azure, Oracle Cloud, those things are more the infrastructure side. So when should we not use the cloud? I bring this up because I've ran into this several times consulting with companies. The primary reason is when you need 100% control of your data, not only from a security perspective, but a physical perspective. So when you're using a general cloud provider, you don't control who goes in that data center. You don't control who can touch your server, who can swap out a hard drive, things like that. Now, they all have policies you can read. They all have terms and conditions. So feel free to read all that. It's very safe, in my opinion. I've run some very complex applications on the internet that have had passports and driver's licenses and things, and kept them 100% secured on the cloud. But when you get into government and DoD, a lot of times they want you to be in your own data center or on the government cloud, which I know that Amazon has one now. I believe Azure is working to get one. But anyway, there's clouds that are certified by the government and the DoD for certain applications. And then legal concerns. Maybe there's a lawsuit and somebody forces AWS or somebody like that to give that other party the data. Maybe it's the IRS. I don't know. But if you have it in your data center, you control who extracts it and who receives it. That's another concern there. Again, not a huge one, but these are things that I've ran into over time in the last 10, 12 years doing cloud systems. Okay, cloud vendors for services. Now, there are tons of these, thousands and thousands, tens of thousands, probably worldwide. For storage, right? We have Google Drive, Dropbox, iCloud, applications, Google Workspace, Office 365, right? Productivity, Adobe Cloud, Canva, I can go on and name hundreds of these. Marketing, Keep, Salesforce.com, collaboration tools like Zendesk, Jira, Slack, right? Banking sites, they're on private clouds. So I kind of use that as a trick question here because they are in the cloud. I can get to them through my browser, I can get to them through the app on my phone, but it's a private cloud, right? They're not sharing that data with anyone. It's sitting in Citibank or Chase or Wells Fargo's data centers. And if they're not, they're in a private area of a data center, whether that be Amazon's or a general provider. There's specialized tools like Huddle, Lucidchart. So Lucidchart's used to do collaboration on drawings and things. We use that. And then like Huddle, you may not be familiar with that, but if you coach football, basketball, soccer, Huddle's a tool that is used to look at video, upload video, and look at plays, diagram plays, things like that. Social media, Instagram, Twitter, you're familiar with those. And website management, GoDaddy, Wix, things like that, creating it. So there's lots and lots and lots of these. Just remember, most of them have a subscription. A lot of them will have a free version that has limited features. Many of them have try you buy, and a lot of them have 1 to 3 month, entry level pricing or free for 3 month kind of thing. So do that. Now, I'm not endorsing any of these products, just to be clear on these next few slides, just showing you examples. There are hundreds and hundreds of them out there. Just start searching and you'll find them. Okay, so infrastructure vendors are the next easiest one to define. Amazon Web Services is by far the largest, although Azure from Microsoft is catching up. Both of those are good for large deployments. They both have multiple data centers worldwide. They have lots and lots of deep functionality, lots of deep features. They're very close to each other. Amazon, of course, had a head start on Microsoft. They are catching up very quickly. I wouldn't say they're equal yet, but if you're using Microsoft products, I definitely start with Azure. If you're using something else, then look at Amazon. I have Microsoft products on Amazon AWS, but that's because we've been using them for a long time. Okay, Oracle Cloud, great for Oracle products. They really cater to corporations. The Google has multiple cloud offerings, general purpose stuff, as well as their workplace and things like that. And then there's lots of other specialized vendors out there. So again, these aren't the only ones out there. There's lots of ones. There's local ones. There's ones that specialize in various industries. So go take a look. Now, platform as a service, this one gets a little bit tricky, right? And it's the gray line again between services and infrastructure. So generally, you're going to have large, deep functionality on this, like Salesforce Lightning, or you're going to have direct infrastructure functions like a Heroku to deploy and run applications. Makes things easy to scale. Whereas serverless, there's a function called AWS Lambda that basically can deploy code. It doesn't require a server. It just kind of launches things as they're needed. Application development, Google App Engine is an example of that. And then we have full featured development, right? Like Red Hat, OpenShift, things like that. Again, many, many, many of these, but this is the gray area because you can see AWS Lambda, right? Is that infrastructure or is that platform? Well, it's considered platform, but obviously they do both. Okay, so that's it. I think we did this in about 30 minutes, 25 minutes or so. So let's do a little quiz here. Is the internet and the cloud the same thing? No, not in a direct definitional sense. Again, the internet's the massive network. The cloud is some type of service that is accessible from that network. We have the 4 primary types: software, platform, infrastructure, and functions. And then we have the 3 cloud types, right? Private, public, and hybrid. Okay. When you're going to use the cloud, it's very important to look at your data security, ensure everything's good there. Government DoD applications, make sure you have the kind of security that you need and control of it. And there are many vendors out there, too many to count, for cloud services. So again, do your research. I've said this many times. Look at the subscriptions carefully. Some of them can be tricky. Some of them can be gotchas, things like that. So that is kind of my primer on the cloud for you guys. If you'd like a free consult with us on any topic, scaling, businesses, investing, whatever, just go to endtoendresults.com, N2 with the number 2, endresults.com with the 2. And there's a free consult there. And we'll basically give you a recording if you'd like of this. We'll also put it on our YouTube channel. And if you're registered, you'll get the recording link. So thanks for coming. I know this was kind of short today, but that was the idea, is just to give you a quick primer. Our next one that's scheduled will be on metrics like profitability and what revenue means and things like that. And you say, well, I know what that means. Well, you know what it means. Does the guy next to you have the same definition, and does marketing and sales have the same definition as the finance department? Probably not. And that's what we'll talk about and go deeper into. Okay, thanks for coming.